Alrighty. Welcome. This is going to be the first awkward little possible podcast that we'll be having. My name is Rugged the Dragon. For those who don't know, I am some people call me a scaly, but I'm a dragon. I'm a pretty cute heckin' bean, as everyone describes me as. So, if you don't, go on to Twitch and follow my channel, Rugged the Dragon. All one word. I'm a cute heckin' bean. Not perfect. I rage sometimes. But, we're all human. Or, in my case, a dragon. But anywho, we are possibly on Spotify, maybe, as well. So, whenever I can, I will go get these videos edited. Dumb it down a little bit, make sure everyone understands. And now, this is completely unscripted. So, my efforts in talking may be, what do you call it, arduous? Is that the word I'm looking for? Very difficult in a way. So, I'm not the perfect talker, but I try to discuss things as clearly as possible, and I try to stick to a certain topic. So today we are going to be talking about video games growing up, all your memories and all that. So, by the way, if you ever want to offer your opinions and you don't want to talk to me directly, that's fine. Go on to my Twitch streaming channel if you're currently active right now. Otherwise, if you're watching this from a podcast, leave future opinions within my Discord server. My Discord server is linked on my Twitter as well as my Twitch. It's all over the place. So you join the server, ask your questions, offer your opinions. And if you ever want to go into voice chat, I will eventually get around to making it work. Invite you to the voice chat to offer your opinion. Who knows? It could be opinions that are like very brief, like somebody just joins in, offers a few moments here and there. We discuss things and then we go to the next person. Or it could be a moment where it's like we get like 2-3 people extra and we just talk for like an hour or two. Who knows? We don't know how long these podcasts are going to be, but it's a work in progress. So we got to start somewhere. Start from the bottom. Now we're here. I don't listen to rap. But anyway. All right. So discussions about video games. So I was born in 1985, October, right? And I didn't really start getting my memories of video games until I was about 3 years old. I remember, them being very intriguing, right? I was just like, oh, who's this character jumping on the screen? That's so cool. He's stepping on turtles. Oh, you got this other guy who's got, a whip and he fights vampires. Oh, that's so cool. What is this? What is this whole concept of video games, right? So I eventually started understanding, and, I always watched my older brother play these games, right? He was always the master. I was worshiping the ground he walks on, essentially. I was like, oh, what game is he going to play next? I want to watch. This is prior to Twitch. The only thing I could watch in terms of Twitch content back in the 1980s was my brother. That was pretty much it. My sisters didn't play. I actually remember my mother playing video games one time. I remember her playing Tetris, and she was freaking good at it. And she doesn't remember. I don't know if she's just legitimately not able to recall that moment, or if she's just trying to nonchalantly be like, I was good, but I don't want people to know, I don't want them knocking on my door and asking for contracts or anything. No. So I didn't start playing video games until I'd say probably around 4 or 5, right? Not I didn't play that long, right? I was not good at games. I always got through the first level, maybe 2 levels. And then I was kind of afraid to go beyond that because I was very afraid of what would happen if it was too difficult. What if I couldn't get through a certain boss, right? I feel bad. So I would go in, play a game, and after 20 minutes or so, I go outside. Yeah, I went outside all the time as a kid. That's what kids did back then. We didn't have our smartphones. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Discord chat. All you had was going outside and maybe encountering a few friends. That was essentially your internet. That was your interaction for that whole day, right? Go around in the bushes, pretend you're Ghostbusters, peeing on every wall you could think of. Well, I assume every kid did that. I don't know. I don't know if it was just me, but anyway. So, I remember one of the first games I ever seen my brother play was Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest for the NES, right? That game, you look back on it now, it's so convoluted. You didn't know what you were doing, right? But the moment you actually found something new, the moment you made that little tiny percentage in progress, you were like, oh my god. You wanted to keep trying to find out, and then you kept getting stuck, right? It wasn't really straightforward of a game, but it was like one of the first games that actually terrified me. Because I didn't know what was going to happen. There was the Night of the Curse, Dracula's dead, but he isn't, Why do people hate you? It's like, in the music itself, the freaking main menu music, it was just like, wow. There we go. There's the theme. Yeah, that's the theme right there. Yeah, this actually terrified me as a kid a little bit. But the main other influence about video games that really got me to play them, for the most part, was there was a show called Captain N, the Game Master, right? I think that was what it was called, Game Master. It was a cartoon where this kid gets sucked into space. Or not space. Oh god, that would be a terrible show ends. He gets sucked into space. No, he gets sucked into the video game world, right? An alternate reality where video games existed. And he basically has a blaster as his primary weapon, a Nintendo Zapper. I believe he had the orange one, I think, at first. Nintendo originally had the blaster as like a gray color, but they were afraid that it was reminiscent of real-life guns, so they just made it orange. And the orange kind of pops out a little bit more. Personally, like the design. He also had a NES controller on his belt buckle. And his basically his goal was essentially he was the hero, gets into trouble a few times. His allies consisted of old Nintendo characters. You had what was it? Was it Princess Toadstool? But she was like in a weird look getup. I can't remember if that was her or not. Kid Icarus, red hair. I don't know why. He had his pet dog with him. Mega Man, who like he was wearing green for some reason, and he sounded like a troll. I don't know why. And Simon Belmont, like, now you think Simon Belmont nowadays he's like serious and like he's no. In this show he was like narcissistic. He always smiled. He had like shiny teeth. He always looked himself in the mirror, and he was just clumsy. Like when he could fight, yeah, that's great. But yeah, no. Like this is for kids, right? They had to make it appeal to every young age back then, right? So yeah, they go in. Okay, so I'm getting a little sidetracked, but yeah, like when I saw media like that, along with the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, The Legend of Zelda, which I've only seen like 1 or 2 episodes of as a kid, those brought me into the whole world of video games in general. I'm like, I was hooked, right? I didn't know how to play them well. I didn't play them that long, but I was hooked. Every morning, I would always go up and watch the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, as I mentioned before. Oh man, good memories. But anyway, so one of the games that actually impressed me in terms of storytelling, like the game that made me go, oh my gosh, I'm not just jumping around and getting to the end of the level. No, there's a story, a compelling story that is way more convoluted than rescuing a princess from a castle by playing as a mustachioid plumber. That game was called Ninja Gaiden for the NES. Ninja Gaiden 2 was my favorite. That introduced a lot of good memories, right? It was like, back then you're like, okay, well, what do we do? We just jump around and all that stuff? You do, but before the game starts, and in between certain levels, you would always get the cutscenes. Now, back then, this was revolutionary, right? You watch a cutscene unfold. You see these characters being animated on the screen. And you can see text, and you just read it. It'll be like, Ryu would be like in a street corner, and he'd be like, oh, I meet this person, and oh no, he shot the monster behind him. And you're like, whoa! Oh, and then he tells you that the one person's in this tower, and you have to rescue her, and then the villain comes out, and all this crazy stuff happens, right? It was like a movie back then, right? I was like, oh, a movie within the video game. Interesting concept, right? Oh, but like I said, I didn't really get invested into video games for more than half an hour until I'd say around the Super Nintendo, right? Now, we got this on Christmas in 1991. And we were like, oh, look at these graphics, Oh no, a new Mario game. And yeah, like it was like one of the first. I think it was one of the first times where I've actually seen my brother completely finish a game. Right, I've seen him beat some games before, but I think the major one that really like got me to just attempt to beat video games was The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Right, I remember the last fight, my brother like sweating almost, and he finally beat the last villain. And I'm like, yeah. And I said to myself, I could do that too, right? I want to do that too, and I did. I did. Eventually, I did. I followed the same advice my brother gave me. I watched him play. I had the training. I had the training. so, so I finally beat the game, and I felt so proud. And then I started beating more games along the way. But there were some other games that were so difficult, I was losing confidence really quickly. So there was like one time I was playing a game. I don't know if anyone's ever played these. The Super Star Wars trilogy for the Super Nintendo, right? They had to call it Super because that was everything. Super Metroid, Super Star Wars. Well, they already called Mario Super anyway. But anywho, I remember the last level of the original Star Wars: A New Hope. I remember the last part. I had to pause the game, and I'm like, older brother, hey, can you come here and beat this game for me? He goes, no, I'm doing something else. And I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? So I eventually just walked back and forth and swallowed my pride. No. I guess I don't say swallow my pride. I mean like accept that if I fail, I fail. Just get it over with, right? Walked in, played as best as I could, and I beat it. And I'm like, why was I losing confidence in my abilities? I could beat this game. So I think when it comes to being impressed with video games to give me an everlasting thought about it in terms of how good it was, I would say one of the other ones I remember playing when I was growing up was Donkey Kong Country, right? The first two. The third one, not as much, but the first two were just, breathtaking. The music, the graphics, just the setting. Perfect almost. Pretty much perfect games, right? If you ever could get your chance to play these old SNES games, definitely play some of them. The ones I'm mentioning are freaking fantastic. But I remember the one that actually got me so hooked. I had to rent it from the video store multiple times because of how good it was, even though I had no chance of beating it because of how long it was. Well, in the day, it was called Final Fantasy III, right? For the Super Nintendo. We know it's Final Fantasy VI, and that's what I prefer to call it, but back then, it was Final Fantasy III. We didn't know any better. So I popped this thing in, and I remember the first opening theme music you hear when you walk on the snowfield after the opening prologue, that song stuck in my head. It's still stuck in my head. It's still, I said to myself, how could somebody make a melody so perfect like this? It's almost as good as one of my other favorite melodies from a movie called The Snowman. That's a little off topic, but he's that. Oh man, and like the story, everything about that game was so perfect. And by the way, Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster is set to release in February, so I will definitely play it. Man, it's gonna be so much good memories. Everything about that game was just fantastic. You had the battle system, which was simple. You had the music. You had the storylines, and if you can resist the urge to cry, that game will test your skill. There are a lot of moments in that game where you're like, oh my god, why? I don't remember it like that. Oh, like growing up, you start feeling more emotional, right? As a kid, I felt kind of emotional, but I didn't fully understand the impact until I grew up. It was just that. Okay, so yeah, Final Fantasy VI, guys. If you ever want to get it on Steam when it comes out via the Pixel Remaster, get it. Just get it right away, right? So, going on, I remember for Super Nintendo games, we're like, okay, cool, we got all these games and all that, and we heard rumor that Nintendo was going to offer us another console, and we're like, ooh, and we had Nintendo Power back in the days, right? We always read those things, and the system was going to be called the Ultra 64. Well, that was the tentative title back then, and we were looking at these screenshots of the graphics, and we never seen 3D graphics before. We've seen somewhat 3D graphics back in the days when you had Doom ported on Super Nintendo and all that, but full 3D graphics, right? This was mind-blowing. And finally, after many years, they updated the name to Nintendo 64. My dad got us for Christmas again because, you know, he was a great father. My dad, he spent 20 years in the Air Force. He was hardworking and all that, but there was some ups and downs with the whole growing up or whatever, but that's life, right? So we finally got us a Nintendo 64. He waited in line for it. This was back before you had shortages. Well, there probably was shortages, but not as bad as today. We got this. I couldn't play worth a damn. I was trying to get used to the movement, but I'm used to the control pad, right? I've never thought about using a controller stick on a controller. You know, to be honest, I thought that controller stick on the Nintendo 64 controller, I thought that was a giant button. I was like, oh, you press this button to jump, you press this B button to jump, and this big round button here, you push that to activate a superpower or something like that. I'm like, that was my mentality growing up. I don't know how I remember that. But like, I got used to the control stick movements, right? I started getting good. Like, I beat Mario 64, GoldenEye. One of my other underrated favorites was Castlevania for the I can't speak today. One of my other underrated favorites was Castlevania 64. Well, it wasn't really called 64. It was just called Castlevania. Everything about that game was great. I don't care what people say. I loved it. But I remember one of the ridiculous... one of the most ridiculous things I've ever remember was one of my first major fears in video games, right? It wasn't my lack of confidence, right? So, for those of you who know, some of you can probably relate, in Super Mario 64, excuse me, there was a giant eel. In one of the levels, you go into a painting, there is a water-based world where you can go underwater and you see a sunken ship. And an eel is stuck in the ship itself. So you swim near it, doesn't do anything. You swim away, it gets out, and it starts swimming around. And I thought, oh my god, this is so cool, right? Oh my god, this is so amazing. I can't believe that something like this could exist in a video game. I'm like, oh, it's breathtaking, right? So I'm like, oh man, it's so cool looking. Oh man. So I was just amazed. I was floored. I was heavily floored. So I come back to that same stage and I'm like, I wonder. What if I go back to it? And there's a mission called Can the Eel Come Out to Play? I'm like, oh, I get to talk to him. I get to interact with him. I get to swim with him. Yeah. So I go underwater again, and he's in a different spot. And I'm like, oh, he's in his home now. He's just sticking his head out there. So I'm going towards him. I'm like, okay, all right. This eel's just hanging out like he normally does. I wonder if he's gonna talk to me. Maybe he has an issue and he wants me to solve it. I get close to him, and he comes out a little bit, opens his mouth, and I can see his teeth. And Mario, I can see the character getting injured. Like, my health bar goes down because he hurt me. I pause the game, and I process the pure terror that sticks with me even to this day. Anytime I'm in a game where it involves something like a monster under the water that's huge, I'm going to be terrified. I don't care if it's something non-Mario based. If there's something that involves me going underwater to fight giant monsters, no. Oh my gosh. I've never had that much terror. Like, I legitimately freak out. I'm not joking. I go under the water in any video game, and it's just, no, I don't want to do it. Most recently in my stream, I was playing Super Mario Odyssey, and there was a part where you have to go underwater, go through like an underwater cavern full of these eels, right? And they look more terrifying than they were back in 1996. I'm like, no, I skipped that. I was like, no. Oh, man. So, yeah, if people in the Twitch chat right now are curious about the topic and want to offer an opinion, I'll read it. And, yeah, we'll have a discussion about that, too. But like I said, if you're on a podcast, if you're listening to this on Spotify, if you want future discussions to be I'll offer my future discussion topics, right, within the podcast discussion within Discord. So I will offer people like a week or so to think up their opinions, and then when the podcast comes out, I'll actually read them. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, RuggedTheDragon on Twitch, selfless promotion. All right, so yeah, but I remember back in the day, we only had one choice of a console, right? Back then there was Nintendo and Sega, Nintendo 64 and Sony PlayStation, right? We only could choose one. Only one. So of course we had to go with the one we were most familiar with, which was Nintendo. We had the NES, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, the GameCube. But then I realized, some of my other friends had a Sega Genesis. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. Sonic the Hedgehog is pretty neat. Nowadays, Sega Genesis had a few good games, but I mean, this may upset people, but Genesis wasn't my favorite console. It didn't really sound too great. Sorry about that. That's my phone. Didn't really sound too great, music, audio quality wise, all that stuff. But the one that really made me kind of regret having the Nintendo system, if I could go back in time, I'd probably get it, was the Sony PlayStation. For those who don't know, the Sony PlayStation, it was going to be called the Nintendo PlayStation. Nintendo had an agreement with Sony, but I believe they had a dispute over the discs because Sony wanted a profit from what they were supplying to Nintendo. Now, back then, the old president of Nintendo, I forgot his name, not a good decision maker. He's like, no, we want the profit. So we're going to cancel our agreement with Sony, and we're going to go with Philips CDI. And they're going to create some games on our blessings. What could go wrong? And for those that don't know, do some research on it. You'll be amazed. But anyway, so the PlayStation 1. I remember some of my other friends had this. My brother-in-law definitely, right? And I was watching, and I was like, okay. And I didn't realize how powerful this system was compared to Nintendo 64. Well, they were pretty much the same power, but one had more storage space, so you could put full motion videos, FMVs, and I'm watching them, and I'm like, is this a movie? And I was just amazed. I was floored. I'm like, how did I not get this system? And of course, I made former friends, along like middle school, high school. Well, my friends had a PlayStation, right? And occasionally we borrow our games. We borrow games here and there, right? And I think eventually my brother borrowed the PlayStation from his friend. So I started playing a bunch of games that my friend was letting me borrow. I was playing like one of my favorites of all time. One of my very, very amazing games that I played back in the day for the PlayStation 1 was called Metal Gear Solid. Oh my god. Everything about that was just pure amazement, right? This was back when Kojima could actually make games, right? So people are like, well, you could make games today. I'm like, nah. See, I played Metal Gear Solid 5. That was boring. Interesting, but boring. Metal Gear Solid 1, that was like the meat and bacon of the Metal Gear franchise at the time, right? You had other ones before that for the Japanese system called the MSX, but this one was just wow. It was one of the first games that introduced like a huge emphasis on stealth. If you didn't go stealthy in this game, if you weren't stealthy at all, you were going to get punished. And that's what the game should have stuck to. But over the time, they're like, we should introduce more combat-related things, right? And it lost its sense of stealth, the way it was based on, right? Tactical espionage. And it just lost its way. And then I remember other PlayStation games. I remember the Final Fantasy series, for example. Also, yeah, thanks for the follow, by the way. So I disabled the notifications regarding my discussions, so they don't interrupt with the whole thing. But yes, Pudo Jack, hey, thanks for the follow on my Twitch, by the way. I'll definitely give you everyone shout outs here and there. So yeah, like I said, if you have any questions or any kind of like opinions regarding this topic about video games growing up, please let me know in the chat. let me know in my Discord. Either way, I'll read it, offer your opinion, offer my opinions about it. You offer your opinions. We'll have a little discussion about it. So, yeah, PlayStation 1 definitely changed my perception of video games because I was like, I didn't know video games can have these good full motion videos, right? Yeah, the loading times are a little ridiculous, but oh man. And but growing up though, we didn't have a PlayStation 1. We had to borrow it. I didn't play many games for it until after I graduated high school. Now, after high school, I didn't play video games for about 3 months because, for those who don't know, I was in the military. 3 months of boot camp in the United States Marines. No video games for 3 months after playing video games almost every single day. You know how painful that is? Oh, man. But, like, I'm an older generation, so, like I said, I've been around since, like, the 80s. So things were a little different back then. So, before we continue on, let's see in the chat. So, Spudojack, you said you grew up with the DS and an Xbox 360. The DS, I got that for Christmas a long time ago. I played it quite a bit. I think one of my favorite games definitely on that was the Castlevania series, like Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, Order of Ecclesia. I can't remember a bunch of other games on the DS, but I remember I did like that system. And the 360, oh man. So, okay, so this goes into military. So after a while, going through military times, I had to go hook up my GameCube system to a portable DVD player. Because we have squad base back in the MOS school, which was in Oklahoma. So after a while, we got our barracks rooms. I got myself a bigger TV because I needed it. I eventually got myself an HD TV after my first deployment. And I'm like, with my mind, I'm like, I've never seen an HD video game before. I've had a widescreen. I got a widescreen TV back then. Back then, this was like 1080. I don't know if it was 720p or 1080i interlaced. There was no such thing as 1080p yet, although they started coming around later on. The 360. I hooked that sucker in. Oh my god, the graphics. The first major graphics I recall that blew my mind for the 360 was a game called Condemned: Criminal Origins. Criminal Origins. Holy moly. It was one of the first games also that really terrified me. Now, not spoiling it too much, but I remember there was a part where you had to check a locker, and something happened. I won't say it. I won't spoil it. You gotta play the game yourself. Condemned: Criminal Origins. I would recommend playing on 360 because the PC version is pretty broken. Anyway, and I remember a certain thing happened. I jumped out on my seat just about. I almost fell backward. I was like, why did the game do that to me? The sequel is good too. There's a part where you have to get chased by a bear. That's all I'm going to say. That's terrifying enough. But yeah, 360. It was one of the great consoles. It launched early, and we were surprised. We're like, wait, Xbox came out back in what year? Like, what was it, 2004, I think? No, 2001, actually. Sorry. Gotta go back a little bit. And then 4 years later, the 360 came out. We're used to the generation of new consoles coming out like every 6 or 7 years or so. This came out early. And we're like, what? Now, wasn't the best decision because this led to the infamous Red Ring of Death. For those who don't know, the console itself was kind of rushed. And the more you play it, the more it degrades on the inside. Eventually, I forgot what component it was. There's a certain component within this console that will degrade. And if it does, your console won't work anymore. And you'll get this, like, you'll have these, like, there's 4 green rings, and that makes a circle. If you had 3 rings that were all red, and they were flashing, your console was dead. That's why they called it the Red Rings of Death. Very infamous. You have some people talking about it today still. It could be repaired by sending the Xbox back to Microsoft, and then they give you another one. Back then, you put it in the cardboard box they give you. That was like the coffin. You just do a little salute as it goes away. And you could hear taps as it gets mailed away. But then it comes back all brand new. So, Spudo, you just realized that you're talking to a dragon avatar behind loads of food, talking about Xbox 360s. Yeah, video games and junk food. That's how it was. That brings up another good memory, by the way. So, back in 1999, one of my friends had a PlayStation, right? And a video game came out called Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Oh boy. Now, we didn't have money back then, but you know how we got our free rentals from the video store back in the day? Report cards. So we went to we got our report cards ready, right? Well, I got mine. I was like one of the few kids that got good grades. So I got my report card. We got the game, and we're like, hey, we only rent this game for 2 days. I got my report card here. So they looked at it, and they said, oh, A's and B's, very good. They stamped it. And we walked to buy 7-Eleven. We had, like, I had $5 back then, right? So I'm like, okay, let's get some jerky, and let's get some something to drink. So we did. Went over to his house, and he had like his old Lara Croft memory card from this PlayStation, right? Puts the memory card in, puts the game in. We started up. Oh my gosh. We took turns playing it, right? We sat on this large couch. He had a bigger TV back then, right? I didn't have a TV this size. My TV was like 13 inches. It was like an old analog signal kind of thing. But anyway, we took turns playing this game. And I remember the fondest memory was just me sitting there, watching my friends kind of struggle, eating a Slim Jim, and taking a few sips of my drink. And then every once in a while, he wouldn't know what to do. I take the controller. I figure it out because I'm more experienced. I think I was. I don't know. I think my other friend was more experienced than I was. Gets to the part where I give him the controller and he enters the police station. And this Nemesis guy comes out of nowhere. Big dude. And we're like, run, 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 run. He goes, I don't want to fight it. No, don't run. Or, don't fight it. Just run. And as soon as he did run, he goes to the police station. He's banging on the door. We're like, no, run, run. I was legitimately terrified. Oh man. So yeah, I don't think I've ever had an Xbox. No, I did have an Xbox Red Ring on me once, right? But I followed the proper procedure. I contacted them, told them, hey, this is what I see. This is the error message that pops up. And they're like, okay, we're going to send you a box. So, as I mentioned before, they sent me a box, put it in there, mailed it back to them. I think about after a week or so, they sent it back to me. And it worked. It worked perfectly fine. And I don't think I've ever had a Red Ring since then. Because I believe they updated the consoles over time, obviously. Prevent that. You would love to go to 7-Eleven in the future. We still have a 7-Eleven near us. Been there since I was here. Always go up there. Always buy a Twix for $1.05. A king-size Twix for $1.05, by the way. That's how much they were back then. Now it's like, what was it? Like $1.80? It's like $1.92 after tax or whatever. Probably $2 now. Man. That inflation. Politics, right? But we won't talk about politics here because politics are just, it's like peppers in your cereal, right? You try to eat it, it's not going to end well. Why would you even put peppers in your cereal? That's topics. That's topics regarding politics. But like I said, if I make little mistakes here and there, like I said, I'll edit the audio a little bit so it's a little bit clearer for the viewers or listeners, because I'm on Twitch. Again, Twitch, RuggedTheDragon, all one word. All right. So, yeah. So, video games during the military time, in the Marines, right? I remember I got the original Xbox. Someone didn't want it, so I bought it from him. I'm like, okay, it's got a couple sports games here and there, but it's got Halo. So I played Halo for the first time, and I was amazed by it. And we played offline multiplayer with it until we got word that the second one was coming out very soon. And we're like, oh, shoot, they're making the second one. I forgot about that game. So I remember when the second Halo came out, right? The most fun thing we ever did was going in our barracks rooms. Our barracks rooms are connected to one bathroom. You go in you have your room, you go in the restroom, and there's another door that leads to the next room, right? 2 rooms were connected, nothing more. So I remember we had 2 Xboxes in each room, big TV in the other room. And we would have a link cable going from the Xbox, running the cable through the bathroom, and the other end of the cable into the other Xbox. And we played 8-player, or not 8-player. We had 8 players total, 4v4 in Halo 2 back in the day. Oh my gosh, we had so many competitive moments. There would be times where our team loses. There would be times where we destroy the other team. We switch people out once in a while. But every single time a match ends, we have to take a break. Of course, people smoked outside the room. I didn't smoke. But we would come out and we talk trash. You'd be like, oh, look at you. I freaking teabagged you. Oh, that headshot. You know, we were just like ecstatic. We were just smiling, you know, talking trash to each other. But that's how we were in the Marines, right? Marines always talk trash to each other, right? Marines, we got to be tough. We got to be tough. That's like the few of the proud, right? Oh man, 4-player 4v4 Halo went before like internet was a major thing, right? Like internet was a thing, but you didn't really play a lot of online games back in the day. Halo 2 was the first, for me at least. But I remember like later on, people were like, "Hey, you love Halo so much, right?" Yeah, I love Halo. I will never play any other multiplayer game. Well, this new game came out called it's called Call of Duty 4. It's not World War II anymore. It's modern day. And I was like, "Oh, really? Oh yeah, I heard about that. I might give it a shot. I mean, I may not like it. I probably won't play it anymore after that, but who knows?" Fast forward like a decade later, I'm still playing it. I remember it first impressed me. I was like, "What? It's like Halo, but more realistic and faster paced. I don't have to shoot somebody 30 times and spam grenades like in Halo. In this game, you take like a few shots, you're down. Oh, and I can actually create my own classes. Holy moly. This is amazing." Until Modern Warfare 2. That was a disaster for multiplayer. But that's another topic entirely. I can rant about Modern Warfare 2 a whole episode and piss off everybody in the process. That's how it was, right? So, playing today, in regards to video games in general, I mean, it's definitely better. You have way more choices. Back then, I was limited to like a few NES games, Super Nintendo games. I'm like, I don't have anything to play. Nowadays, I have a Steam account with like hundreds of games that I haven't beat yet, and I'm like, I don't have anything to play. Oh man. Yeah, I definitely also played a lot of Call of Duty back. Like, I still play Call of Duty today. Not as much now because I have a job, 12-hour shifts, But I still play. And I play a bunch of other games too. I just realized, so many years ago, there was this service that launched, right? It was called Justin TV. I'm like, why would I want to watch something about a guy named Justin? Who's Justin? Why is he so special? So, found out later on it became Twitch, right? And I'm like, so I understood the concept. I was like, okay, there's people that play video games, right? Imagine if you could play it and broadcast it to everybody, and they just watch you. I'm like, oh, like YouTube, right? Kind of, but it's live. So if you make a mistake, it's there. People know it. You can't just edit it out. You can't make it look better with YouTube or anything. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, it was. For those in the chat, yes, Justin TV. I think prior to Twitch, it was called Justin TV back in the day. I believe I have to do a little research on it. But yeah, Justin.tv. Website created by Justin Can. A bunch of other people in 2007. The user accounts were just called channels, kind of like YouTube, right? And eventually, this turned into Twitch. This was back in 2011 when this happened, right? And I didn't really get into streaming until, I'd say around 2012, 2013. Not 2013, I bet, right? But and he also says that's what Keemstar was on, I think. I don't know. Maybe. Your guess is as good as mine. Keemstar. Why are we talking about him? He's made so many mistakes, but he's still... The only thing I respect about Keemstar is that he's still doing what he's doing, right? He's not a great person. He's made a lot of mistakes. I'm not supporting him in any way. But he's persistent. So that's a quality that not a lot of people have. So that's one good thing I can say. Okay, so back in the day, I actually did some YouTube videos. I made Black Ops gun game reactions. So for those who don't know, Call of Duty has a game mode called Gun Game. And your goal is to start with a pistol or whatever. If you get a kill with a pistol, you advance to the next weapon. And you keep advancing until you reach the last weapon, get a kill with that last weapon, and you win the game. But here's the catch. If somebody runs up to you and hits you with a melee attack and kills you with it, you get set back one tier. And this pissed people off. And the moment I started hearing people react, I'm like, oh God, I gotta do this. So I got myself a capture device finally. It was called the Hotmog HD PVR. That's a mouthful. Nowadays you have an Elgato, maybe an Avermedia device. Back then, Hotmog HD PVR. Yeah. They probably still make devices today, who knows, but no one hears about this. So I started recording, making videos, and uploading them on YouTube, thinking one day I'll get 1 million subscribers, just like that guy known as PewDiePie, who plays these horror games, and, he plays in his kitchen, and he's pretty funny, Maybe he'll get famous too, right? Yeah, I'm old. I'm sorry. So, eventually I started realizing that if I have a laptop and this program called OBS, I could start streaming too. So, made my first account. Started streaming, didn't go very well, right? And I get to that moment where I feel like I'm no good, I'm not doing well. And I regret it to this day. I deleted my old YouTube channel, right? I made a new one after a while, but the fact that I deleted the old one, there were so many good videos I should have just kept. I should have kept them. And I regret it to this day. So don't give up, people. If you have a moment where you're like, man, I'm not as good as this person, look at their quality, look at mine. Don't try to compare. Make yourself better, right? I'm not perfect. I mess up a lot. I still mess up. There are times when I regret things that I do. I'm not perfect, but the fact that I admit it and I try to improve from then on, that's one of my good traits, But anywho, what was I talking about? So, yeah, streaming. I started in 2013, around there. Made an old account, didn't think it was good enough, deleted it. Made a new one, started getting more popular, right? And then eventually, around the 2013, I wasn't a full-fledged furry yet. I was into the fandom, right? Got a couple artwork pieces, but I wasn't full-fledged yet until later on. Then I realized to myself, you know what? I should actually advertise this. I should be a furry streamer. Eventually, I changed my name. It used to be Rugged Savior. I don't know why it was called Rugged Savior. I figured the Savior part was just kind of annoying. Everyone just calls me Rugged, so I just wanted to be called Rugged. Then, of course, I couldn't make that name, so I had to say RuggedTheDragon. Because what else would I be? And I got a 2D face rig. For those who are watching on stream, that's what you're seeing right now. With food in front of me. So, yeah, big dragon. And I figured, well, people would like this more. No one wants to see my ugly face on a webcam. I used that for so many years. You'd always see my face. I had a bald head. I shaved my own head, by the way. I shave my own head because it's cheaper than getting a haircut. Why pay $20 every month for a haircut when I could pay $15 for safety razors and shave my head for 5 years? You do the math. So eventually I got myself a 2D face rig, and I've been getting a lot more followers. I have about over 1,200 so far as of this recording. Could be more. over time. In the distant future, when it comes to streaming and video games, I want to go get myself a 3D avatar, right? A 3D, full 3D. I want to be able to move around, wiggle my hips, do some more VR chat streams, right? That's the future. I'm dedicated to it. I will be. I can't wait. So yeah, when it comes to video games in general, yeah, like I said, started as a kid, 3 years old, 1987, right? Had lack of confidence overall trying to beat games. I was terrified of some of them. But over the years, games got better and better. We have more freedoms to play games than we did back then, right? Back then, my mobile experience when it comes to video games was holding a Game Boy to a traffic light or carrying a little flashlight and putting it someplace where I could see my Game Boy on the road trips, And now you can play games anywhere. I could load up my phone right now and play any kind of NES game I want. Backlit screen, don't have to worry about anything. Just boop, done. Couldn't do that back then. Back then, you had to bring a few games with you in a carrying case and hope, for the love of God, that your Game Boy batteries were good. Because once you start seeing that red light fade away, oh, it was devastating. You're racing against time to try to beat the game or save the game or whatever you're trying to do. Oh, man. Good times, right? And those Game Boys, they could eat batteries. They took 4 AA's. 4 AA's. And you would be out of power for I think after a couple days or so. After a couple days, you see the light fading away. And you're like, no. Oh, man. A lot of people don't know the struggle back then when it came to gaming, right? We were limited based on technology. Sometimes even our imagination, way before I was born, back in the Atari days, right? I never played Atari. You go back to Atari, you're like, what the heck is this? But people actually played these back then. The most famous game back in the 70s was Pong. But yeah, that was way before my time. I grew up with Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers Super Show. It's a Mario Brothers for plumbing's our game, and I don't know the rest of the words, but I love the show. And I miss Captain Lou Albano and the other actor who played Luigi. They're both gone, by the way. Sad news. Yeah, they've been gone for years, though. Looking up right now, actually. It was Captain Lou Albano and Danny Wells. Both of them are gone. Lou Albano passed away in 2009. And Danny Wells passed away in 2013. Oh yeah, good memories, man. But back when I was a kid, like I said, I was like Mario Brothers are on TV, yeah. And after the show was over, we wanted to play Mario Brothers. So yeah, sometimes I ramble. Like I said, I should probably have more bullet points to discuss things in order. But in due time, like I said, this is a work in progress. This is going to be a possible first podcast. Lots of errors. I can't talk very well, but I try to entertain you guys and gals, whoever you identify by. It's fine by me. But yeah, this is pretty much going to be the end of the podcast itself. So, like I said, guys, if you ever want to go into a voice chat with me and discuss things briefly, offer your opinions in text, offer your opinions within the stream itself while it's live, please, I implore you, interact with me, right? Have some discussions, laugh, that's what I want. And of course, go on to RuggedTheDragon on Twitch. And this podcast, I have not clearly made a name for it yet. You might see a title of it soon, but in the future, we will actually address it officially every time we stream. So that's pretty much how it's going to go. And that's pretty much all the time we have today. So I appreciate everybody coming by to watch the stream or listen to the podcast. And I hope you had a good time. Please also offer me feedback. Tell me what the heck I'm screwing up on. And yeah, we'll see you again later on. Maybe next episode, next stream. And yeah, have a good day, everybody. Have a good night. Enjoy your life. because it's definitely worth living. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.